Right. So yeah, we're going to look at how to renovate a house for a BRR project. There's quite a few people actually interested in this, and people looking for the BRR projects. So yeah, then people will be listening to the recording as well. But yeah, ask any questions as we go along. So BRR, as we all know, it's buy, refurbish or renovate, rent out, and refinance. And the key thing on a BRR type project, whatever the scale, is the aim is to get something at a low enough price, add value by yeah, doing some renovation or conversion in such a way that the end value is considerably higher than the cost of purchase and the cost of renovation, so that we can refinance at the end, get money out, and start again. Obviously, when we're talking about, like, as a fast look at the figures, when we refinance, we're generally refinancing at 75% loan to value. So to get all the money out, we've got to have basically 25% increase in value to get all the money that we put in out of it. And this can be quite difficult on a, let's say, your standard terraced house in the lower cost areas of the UK. Generally, we're looking at leaving probably 10 to 15,000 pounds in a BRR deal, where we've one of these deals which is like 100,000 pounds all in. So we're looking to leave 10 or 15,000, and that increases if we're not doing it ourselves. Obviously, if you don't have time, then it makes sense to pay someone to find the property and to look after the renovation. But that's typically going to add around 10,000 on the bill and on the money that's left in there. But what we say at the same time is, if you've got that money and you're going to wait until you've got time to do it, you might as well get someone else to do it. So you're earning the income, getting a good amount of the money out to be able to start again. And generally, people who've got their own business, or they're maybe working as a consultant, it's best to sort of stay doing what they know, or what you know, as doing well and bringing in the money. Get on to a project, and as you're earning money from your work, that can be used as a top up to be able to get into the next BRR deal. And over time, when you've got a few, maybe 3, 4, or 5 of them, the incoming money from those deals, sorry, yeah, from those rental properties, together with the refinance at the end of each renovation, is like auto-sufficient and enough to get on to the next property. So that is what BRR is. So yeah, buy, refurbish, refinance, and repeat. The aim is obviously, once we've got the money out, to repeat and go on to the next one. So yeah, the goal: maximize return on investment through efficient renovation and valuation uplift. So getting end value that is higher. Oops, sorry. Sorry, just a moment. I've gone too far. Yes. So what is the like overview or the process for doing a renovation? So yeah, before we buy a property, we're going to be doing what we call here the pre-acquisition assessment. We're going to look at what we need to do on the property, make a list of yeah, everything that we need to include in our what we call a schedule of works. We're defining the renovation scope. A common error is to over renovate something. If we're, let's say, used to living in like living in luxury, living in a really nice flat or house, and then we buy a rental property, we're thinking we want to do it up to a really high and nice standard. But the aim in property investment is to do the renovation basically up to the level that's needed for the market. Because if you do put too much money into it and do it to a higher standard than is needed, you're not going to be able to get all of that money out, and there's going to be more money left in the project. Choose the execution method. So how are you going to do a renovation? In practice, there's two ways of doing a renovation on a BRR house like refurbishment project. We're going to see this in more detail, but in essence, it's either using what we call a main contractor. So this is a building company that will come in and give a overall quote for all the works. This building company will be managing obviously all the individual trades, some of it with their own staff, and some of it they're subcontracting to people that they're already using. So either it's using a main contractor, or for someone that has the time and generally at least some experience, is managing individual trades. So getting people in to do the work on the different stages. In some cases, at let's say the extreme level of that, it's actually hiring people for parts of the project. Like, for example, there isn't a trade specifically that is to come and rip out everything that needs removing from a property. So there is possible to actually hire people for a week or two to do that. Yeah, so that execution method is basically project managing individual people and individual trades. And then we do have like an intermediate solution that sometimes people use, is to hire it's not generally not that much more cost effective, but there can be advantages, is to hire a project manager. So you're actually paying someone to manage the renovation project. And this person is organizing buying materials, is organizing hiring or subcontracting, getting in the trades. But the difference there is the project manager is not acting as a company. The project manager is an individual that's got experience in managing projects. You're paying the project manager to look after the project, and you're also paying then the individual trades as the project manager is bringing in the bills and buying the materials and organizing the works. And then, yeah, needed to plan the works, the budget, and timelines, deliver the project. So get the project done either with the main contractor or trades. Check that everything has been done properly, refinance, and get on to the next project. Are there any questions at this point in time? Right, so we'll go on to the next ones. So how are we defining the scope of work? So first of all, we're having like an overall view is, are we doing like structural work and a significant like renovation, which means like breaking things, removing old plaster, what we call back to brick, or are we just doing like a light renovation? And then what is a really good plan? And even when you're like, yeah, looking at a property to purchase, is to, even if it's like repeating yourself, is to do everything on a room by room basis. So you'll start, for example, in the living room, and you'll look at everything in the living room. So you look at the ceiling and you'll say, look, this ceiling is fine, or this ceiling needs reskimming. We're going to look at the quality of the walls. These walls need the wallpaper removed. If we can we'll pull a bit of the wallpaper off generally agents don't mind us doing that if it's in a poor state anyway, to understand behind the paper if the plaster is falling off the walls as well. So we can understand straight away, is it just a question of sanding and repainting, or is it a question of breaking everything and re-plastering? And we're basically going through every room. We're looking at the room, we're looking at the electrical fittings. So we might be looking, look, see, there's only one socket that looks really old. So we need to do some electrical work. We're looking at the woodwork, the carpentry. Are we going to replace the doors? Are we going to redo the skirting board? We're basically looking at absolutely everything that's in the room and making a list of saying this is good, we're going to keep it. This we need to change. And then when we've gone through all the rooms, generally when we get back home, we can compile this into like a more detailed list, an overall list, where we're going to say we're going to change all the doors, we're going to not change the architrave of the skirting, or we are going to do it. These are the rooms that we're going to have to skim and plaster. And yeah, we're really breaking it down into all the work that is needed, so that we can get quotes, or we can make our own estimations on what needs to be done. So yeah, we're looking at the refurbishment level, from light, just like painting, flooring and things, to heavy, where we're either doing conversions or doing back to brick. Then we're going to be looking at the safety and legal aspects. So what do we need in the way of fire safety, like fire doors, fire alarm systems, electrical safety. Mentioned on here, damp proofing. We're going to be looking at if there are any damp in the house, and where that damp is coming from. Damp can come either from through the infiltration through the roofs. It can come from rising from the ground, or it can come from condensation in the house, specifically if it's been like closed for a very long time. And very occasionally also damp can come from pipes that are leaking inside a wall. So we're going to list all that, and we're going to review each one and understand what are the works to be able to bring the property up to the level of compliance, depending on what we're going to be doing with it. Because there's a different level of compliance if we're doing a standard let, or if we're doing a small HMO, or a large HMO, or if we've got a mixed use with commercial and residential in it. And then we're going to be looking at value added changes. So we're looking at what can we do to add value to the property, so that we can get that higher end value. Then we're going to be going down to the individual cost of everything. And here there's two ways of doing it. If you've got experience and you've done this before, then effectively you can list all the items, and you can understand what it's going to cost. Or at that point in time, you can get in main contractor to give you a quote. But you can only get a quote, a proper quote, if you're able to give a itemized list of everything that you want doing on the property. So it's really important to have that list, and then either use that list yourself to make the estimations and get that down to individual quotes, or to be able to put that out to a main contractor. If you've decided that you're going to be project managing the development, then it's going to be a question of getting quotes from all the different tradesmen involved. And there you're going to be having the list per trade. So you're going to have the list of all the electrical work that you need doing, have the list of all the plumbing that's needed, have the list of plastering, a list of carpentry, list of decorating. Typically, there's going to be probably around on a standard BRR project, there's going to be something like 10 different types of tradesmen, people from whom you need to get quotes. And yeah, I see on here the last thing, including things like skip hire, waste disposal, site security, and insurance. Even getting rid of all the rubbish there, you need to take that into account, make an estimation of how many skips that's going to be, or get quotes from waste removal companies to come in and give you a quote of how much it's going to cost to get rid of all that. So we've got our costs, then we've got our timeline. An advantage of self-managing as opposed to using a main contractor is obviously main contractor, generally they're doing 1 or 2 projects at a time. So depending on, you don't know when you're going to be completing on the purchase. So quite likely when you're using a main contractor, there's going to be sometimes it can be quite a big delay between completing and actually getting started. And obviously, every delay in a project is money, because when we're looking at BRR projects, we've got holding costs every month. Those holding costs are obviously the things like council tax that we have to pay, the utilities, insurance, and things like that. And if we're using bridging, then every month that we're not doing work on the property is interest that we're paying on the bridging loan. When we're using bridging, we're normally taking out bridging for 12 months. So that means we have to re-exit the bridge within a maximum of 12 months. But of course, with bridging, it's possible to exit at any time after 3 months. So when we're doing a BRR project, it's a bit like a race to see how fast we can get out of the bridging back onto normal finance. And it's also a race, obviously, to get the property income producing, so we can get the income, get the refinance, get our money out and get on to the next project. And if it's like BRR projects, it's building a portfolio. So if we're using main contractors, yes, the question of developing a good relationship with them and keeping them in the loop and doing everything possible so that they're going to be able to start as soon as possible after completion. When you're individually project managing it, it is, if we're doing it well, of course, and are able to be on site regularly, it's possible there sometimes to get things done faster. Because when you know that you're going to be complete maybe 1 or 2 weeks away, you can be sure that people are going to be ready to start the work in the week that you've bought the property. So yeah, that is a big advantage. In all the projects that I've done, we've probably done about 20 over the last 4 or 5 years. 7 or 8 of them have been my own projects. And then over the last couple of years, we've done around 12 renovation projects for on behalf of investors. And generally there, what happens is there, obviously, we've got the role of sourcing a property for an investor, obviously in the areas where we've got build teams. And then we've got like the responsibility of getting it done as fast as possible, helping the customer with their refinance so that they can get out and onto the next deal. So there we're the key is like, yeah, developing contacts and relationship with a number of trades, not having just one electrician to rely on, but having 3 possible ones, so that if one doesn't turn up, it's able to get onto the onto another one. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, Trevor, I was going to ask quickly, I use, the sort of the ways to involve whether a main contractor to do renovation or to obviously project manage that yourself. In your experience, what is the, I suppose, the cost benefit in using the main contractor as opposed to obviously you project managing it yourself or hiring an individual project manager in terms of cost savings? Have
Yeah.
you got any
In
sort of
practice,
numbers?
what we call a developer margin should be between like something like 15 and 20%. When I say developer, that means like main contractor,
Mhm.
because they in that 15 to 20% part will be their profit, and part will be like some of their overheads, administration costs, cost of secretaries, staff, and things like that. So if you've got a project that let's say a main contractor has quoted let's say £20,000 for, if
Mhm.
you take 20% of that off, that will bring you probably to something like 16,000. So potentially, if you were efficiently managing it yourself, and obviously taking time to find the right trades, you could potentially do that for around 16,000.
Mm. And then you're saying time-wise, it's usually more effective if you're obviously project managing this and you're aligning the resources, I suppose, individual contractors to run things rather than using the main contractor. You're saying it's more time efficient if you had the time, obviously, to get people to do it compared to using a main
That's
contractor.
right. Yes. Yeah. And it's
Okay.
also a question of like, if it's the first time, it's going to be quite difficult to have that main contractor that is sort of going to like sort of pull all the stops out and get things done fast. And you'll end up waiting maybe 1, 2, 3 months and finding that that main contractor isn't coming and doing the work sort of thing. And then you're back to square one. Whereas if you're like self-managing or having a project manager, and the builders don't come in the first week, then you just say to them, sorry, we're not going to go ahead with you, and you bring some other ones in to get it done, sort of thing.
Mm, okay.
Obviously, when the projects become much bigger, then it's going to change, because if we like doing, for example, a project where we're creating 12 flats or conversions like that,
Mm,
then it's going to be almost always done with a at least partly a main contractor. But then obviously that generally a main contractor that has got more organization, maybe more serious, and there's going to be bigger legal contracts in place with the main contractor. Because the thing is, if you're using, let's say, a main contractor that in reality is a builder who's got maybe 5 or 6 staff members, and you go to him and say, we'd like to do it JCT, that's like a standard build contract with you with the penalties and everything else that's in them. This builder will say to you that that's fine, I'll get back to you. And of course, they will never get back to you, because all these smaller main contractors, they're not interested in getting into a detailed contract with you. And there it's also really important to get references to go and speak with other customers that have already potentially other investors that have used those contractors
mm,
before you commit to using them. And then, yeah, when it gets on the bigger projects, then the type of contractors that are doing those projects expect there to be a contract in place. And the lenders on those projects will also require there to be contracts in place with the builders, and the lenders are going to check those contracts. I mean, on the when it's like a smallish BRR project for like, for example, 20,000 or maybe 30,000 in some cases, and you're using bridging on that, the bridging lender will want to see the quotes. The
mm,
bridging lender will probably want to see a contract from the builder, but as long as it's like a standard 5 or 6 page contract that covers the basic things such as warranty and the main points, then the lender is going to be happy with that. So in practice, although I'm not a builder as such, and don't, when we're doing the renovation projects in the area where we've got our build team, we're actually acting as a main contractor for
Mm.
the investors. But in practice, it's a couple of people in the team that are doing the project management. And then we do actually have a couple of our own people who are full time, but most of the people, it's people that work for us as needed, like all the different trades. And we've got a lot on the quite a lot of them on our books. So if we say to an investor, look, we'll get your project underway within 1 or 2 weeks from completion, because we're not like a main contractor who's got a certain number of staff, and if they're fully booked, then you have to wait for the next project. Because we're
Mhm.
doing it more on like a project management basis, our guys can manage maybe 3, 4, or 5 projects at the same time, because they're just like basic house renovation projects, and we just bring more people on to do the work.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously someone that's got bit of experience and the time to do it. On it is possible to it's possible to save 3 or 4 thousand pounds, or if someone doesn't have the experience or yeah, put it mildly, getting ripped off by the tradesman, it
Yeah.
can end up costing 3, 4, 5, 10,000 more than it should be with a competent main contractor. So it's always a good thing, by the way, even if you're planning on either self-managing or obviously you can't do this too many times, but get quotes in from main contractors so that you've got an idea of what it's likely to cost, and then break down your costing to this is how much a plasterer is going to cost to do the skimming, this is how much the electrician is going to charge, this is how much my fire doors are going to cost to be installed, and all this sort of thing, and see how it fits in with the main contractor's quote.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably just on your, I suppose, your first few projects, just to get an idea. Because if you're dealing with 10 possible tradesmen, if you want to do comparisons, it's probably going to take you forever, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and in the end, what we do when we're looking at these, we do basically we put together our quotes without contacting the tradesman. Because if we go in a house and we understand that the ceilings need skimmed, the walls need skimmed, but we haven't got to replaster, we know how much that costs, and we can just put that on the quote. We know how much it costs in general to do a new bathroom, a new kitchen. And yeah, when we're looking at a project, we'll put together an estimation in probably half an hour. And in practice, those estimations turn out to be quite accurate. There's always this, it's important here, by the way, it's mentioned contingency. Contingency means obviously keeping money for unexpected things. Generally, contingency should really be only for things that it's not possible to find out when you start a job. So if, for example, and sometimes you're actually putting fixed contingencies. So if it's not clear whether the house needs rewiring, but when you look at it, it looks like it's fine, it just needs a bit of care on it and changing the consumer unit and stuff like that, you'll still build in the contingency so that you can deal with that. Like, for example, doing a rewire of a house in the areas where we operate generally costs something like 3,500. But doing like changing a consumer unit and getting things up to scratch is typically a 1,500 job. maybe 2,000 in some cases. So when we do our estimations or the quotes that we're doing for the investors, we're saying the electric work is going to be 1,500, unless when we do the test, when the electrician does the test, it's determined that a full rewire is going to be needed, in which case it will cost an extra, for example, £2,000. So the investor is able to, or the person doing the BRR project is able to factor in those potential contingencies. There aren't many contingencies. Other things is if we haven't been able to break, for example, some of the walls and we don't know what's behind them, we might have a contingency that we're going to skim. But if we have to board and plaster, it's going to cost this much extra. But most of the things we can plan, and then some things we have to yeah, just add some contingency for things that we haven't at all thought about. One thing we haven't mentioned, which doesn't normally, it says here, planning needs check for building regulations, planning permission, party wall notices and things. Generally, when we're doing a BRR project, we're renovating a house that already exists. So unless we're installing like bathrooms in different places, or we're doing additional openings and installing new windows or things like that, we don't need building regs. If we are doing things like that, yeah, then we need to yeah, consider what building regulations are required. And yet when we're doing things like if we're converting from commercial to residential, an error, quite a big error there is that people that are used, including I've come across, has had this problem myself, obviously learned from these errors. When you're used to doing like a BRR project, renovating a house, you know all the work that there is to do. But when you do commercial to residential conversion, the standards that are required are basically the same as new build standards. You can be renovating a house that's completely run down and derelict. You haven't got to bring it up to current levels for insulation and stuff like that, soundproofing and all sorts of things like that. But if it was previously commercial and you're making it into residential, then you have to, it's basically new build standards, and that can mean a massive amount of work that is required. I'll move on, and we probably cover most of everything anyway. These are just a few more details. Yeah, so choose the delivery model, main contractor route or self-managed routes. So using main contractor standard stuff,
But
get a few quotes,
sorry,
compare.
I have a question, please, Trevor.
Yep.
So, regarding using the main contractor, would you recommend using a project manager or using multiple different contractors, maybe separate electricians, separate plasterer, separate, or you want, is it better to use a project manager to project manage everything?
The thing is, you can use a project manager if you a project manager is not someone that you can easily like sort of hire. You can't like put an advert, and it's not so easy unless it's like a big project to find project managers for these smaller like the BRR things. And what happens is sometimes I know, for example, one of the guys that I do stuff with who project manages a number of my projects or projects for investors. Normally, the way that we do it with an investor is we say it's going to cost you 25,000 for the renovation, and this is what we're going to do, and then we're project managing it. Sometimes, and occasionally we do this, investor will say, I want to pay directly all the people buy the materials and things. And in that case, we'll say, but it will be one of our guys. We'll say, okay, in that case, we can project manage the project. It'll cost you £6,000, for example. We should be able to complete it within 3 months. And this is what we estimate it's going to cost. But then it's not going to be a fixed cost for the investor. The project manager is going to be bringing the plasterer in and saying, look, the plastering work is going to be 1,500. You need to pay the plasterer now. So it still needs more communication between the property owner and the project manager, but it is one way of doing it. But the more common way is, yeah, either main contractor or effectively self-managing. But self-managing is needed to be on site. Yeah, frequently. Generally, I would say at least once per week, and better a couple of times per week, and having really good communication with the individual tradesmen. Like people that we use, our own people for the timekeeping, when they if it's people that we're paying by the hour, for example, they take a photo when they arrive on site. When they're taking their break at lunchtime, they're sending photos of what they've done so far. And at the end of the day, they're also sending photos of what they've done. And we very strictly enforce that so that we've got proper control over what's happening. And if you're project managing yourself, then that's something to really get a handle on and make sure it's done properly.
Question.
Yep.
Have you ever thought of using like security cameras so you can keep an eye on what's going on around the...
Sometimes you do.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have one in every room, but yeah, we can see when people are arriving and what's happening. Yeah, and we tell people, look, we've got cameras on there to understand what's happening. Yeah, and we put in yeah, in property sometimes temporary Wi-Fi. And often if we're going to do a property that's going to be, for example, an HMO or serviced accommodation, we'll get the internet in there even during the building, so that we've got, yeah, good internet. Yeah, because sometimes the project manager is going to go there when we've got a room ready. He might be sitting there doing stuff on his computer, and to have the internet is useful as well. Yeah, so yes, all the main thing is, yeah, really, you can't just say to people, get on with it, and hope that a month later they've done what they said they'll have done. If you're not tracking things like permanently, then it very fast will yeah, get into a bad situation. Unless obviously you're using a trusted main contractor, or yeah, a sourcer manager who's looking after the renovation on the project. Or yeah, coming in as a joint venture where you're someone else is looking after everything. So yeah, moving. Oops, sorry, just a moment. So managing individual trades, yeah. So obviously we've got the order for work, basically rip out what we call first. Sometimes people say, what's first fix and second fix? What that means basically is first fix is, for example, in the case of electrics works, is putting all the wires in, having the wires coming out at the right places on the plasterboard, etc. Then the plasterer is going to be doing their work, and when everything's ready, the second fix is coming and putting the sockets on. And it's exactly the same with plumbing. The first fix is getting all the pipes into the right places, all the waste pipes, the soil pipes. And then it might be tiling, stuff like that. And then the second fix is actually fitting the showers, the basins, and things like that. So obviously to have the proper order, and also generally not to have too many people on site at the same time, so that people, especially if you're doing a house that's 60 square meters, you're going to be wasting time and money if you've got too many people on site at the same time. And then, yeah, written agreements. Written agreements don't have to be like a 10-page contract. It can be with tradesmen, even on WhatsApp, but not just like a WhatsApp message. Can you just install the bathroom? It might be point one, do this first. Point two, can you do that? Point three, so that you can actually then follow up on the individual on the individual points. Tools, obviously, spreadsheets, site folders can be like documents and drawings and things, obviously, that you're going to be leaving on site. And generally, cash flow control, obviously being careful that what you're paying corresponds to at least work and materials. Generally, all builders or main contractors will require advance payments, but obviously make sure they're trusted contractors and keep track of when they're asking for the next payment, what has actually been done. Does it correspond to the agreed schedule of payments? And yes, so just going back to another
On
thing.
that question, please.
Yep.
So with the contracts, what sort of uh ID check or document do you ask for to validate who they say they are?
Right. If it's people that we're hiring, so if we're running them through the payroll, for example, then and this, by the way, can be different because I'm operating a what's called basically a building company. Then if we're hiring people, we have to use what's called the CIS scheme. It's like a government approved scheme, and we have to retain, even if it's like self-employed tradesmen, we have to retain 20% or 30% and pay it directly to HMRC. So in that case, obviously, we're taking proof of ID and proof of address. And if you're the home or the property owner and directly paying tradesmen, then obviously that doesn't have to go via the CIS scheme. But generally, yeah, we'd be looking for not necessary. Sometimes it's a bit rude asking for ID if it's a tradesman. But if it's a tradesman that needs to be qualified, for example, like an electrician, we'll always get their NICIC certificate that proves, and we'll obviously check online that the number that they give, that they are properly registered. The same with gas people. And if someone, for example, is saying they're a qualified carpenter to level 2, we'll ask for confirmation of that. So yeah, so the basic checks. And if it's people that we employ, then it's obviously the full checks. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
You're talking about main contractors. So, what is the procedure you use to check them out financially? I've known a few people being caught out with a builder or main contractor going bankrupt halfway through a scheme, and then obviously everything's up in the air. So, what do you do to safeguard yourself against um, builder going bankrupt?
Yeah, obviously, if it's a limited company, we're going to be looking at their accounts online. So, and if we see that, and sometimes we might actually ask for a copy of their balance sheet or their latest accounts if the filed accounts are very old. And yeah, we'll be asking them, depending, yeah, we will sometimes be asking them to like sign a contract, and there's always a possibility that yeah, that a main contractor will run out of money or get into problems. So the question is to not necessarily have immediate backup plans, but also to have a reasonable level of control over the money that you're paying, so that if something does go wrong, it's not 10 or 15,000 that you've lost. It might be 5 or 6,000. And to yeah, speak with other people. Any good contractor will always be prepared to give references. So customers where you can go and see or actually speak with them. And if they won't give that, then we wouldn't work with them, because that is an indication of something a bit strange. generally, and quite sometimes we don't bother phoning. The fact that they've given us contacts of people that we can phone to find out, then yeah, we do that. Any other what's on the slide here? Yeah. Snagging is like finishing all the little things at the end, deep clean and staging, and getting ready for the revaluations. Depending on the, especially sometimes in BRR projects, lenders are concerned that you've asking for a value which is more than the cost of works plus the purchase price. And there it's important to be able to have proof of the money that you've spent, even obviously that doesn't add up to the end value. And also at the same time, some sort of proof to demonstrate that you bought the property in like poor state and below market value. And then yeah, some tips. Start with end valuation target, track all the costs. If you're doing like BRR projects in the same area, which is what we recommend, there's no point in doing one in one area and then going to a different part of the country and switching if it is like projects that involve a lot of renovation work. Because even if you're using main contractors, it's important to build up the trust and have people ready to work. So yeah, build a trade team over time, document everything. Yeah, expect there to be delays and problems and be ready to solve them. But yeah, we mentioned this near the beginning. Don't overspec for the local rental or sales market because you won't get your money back. Yeah, so it's in renovation where we get most of the value. In fact, there's two areas we get. Obviously, the first value is the price at which we purchase a property, and the second is in the renovation and the conversion. So really having a proper control over that and the costs of that is key in getting maximum amount of money out. So yeah, any questions or maybe comments from experience?
You didn't mention anything about public liability insurance and things like that.
Right, yeah. One thing that, yeah, actually, Opal's that question. We're generally asking all builders and tradesmen for a copy of their insurance. And if you're project managing individual trades, need to make sure that you got effectively for the property from the outset, public liability insurance that covers the potential risks. So that actually is a really important point, Keith. Yeah, so thank you for mentioning that. And it's actually rude to ask like a tradesman for their ID, but it's not rude to ask for a copy of their insurance. It's like standard practice. And you can always say as well, if it's like saying, why do you want that? Don't you trust me, sort of thing. You can always say, I trust you, but I have to provide this to the lender, sort of thing. And then you can, yeah, blame it on the lender. Whereas in reality, obviously, you want to have that to be sure that the person is who they say they are and that they have got the appropriate insurance in place. And yeah, if they're doing things that require proper certification, yeah, to make sure that they've got those certifications. Any final question or comment? All right, well, that's great. So it's 8 o'clock. So yeah, thanks for your time. Hopefully it was useful.
Yep.
And yeah, have a good evening.
Thanks, Trevor.
All right.
You too.
Yeah, Trevor.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, bye.
Bye, Trevor. Before you go. you mentioned, I think you mentioned to me that was it Chepso deal before, didn't you?
Yes, yes,
And that's the one we spoke of earlier.
that's right. Yes.
So what is going on there? Because I should be having some funds going back to me. So just give me a little taste of what's going on there. Can you give me a little reminder, please?
Yeah, and if you're looking at funds, in fact, it'd be worth, by the way, you if you're free on Thursday, we've got a special webinar with the guy that is the commercial property asset manager that I'm doing things with.
Okay.
We're going to be presenting, obviously talking about in general about commercial property, but also presenting some specific deals.
Are you gonna? I can't do Thursday. Are you gonna record that?
Yeah, it's all going to be recorded. I just moment. I just need to see if I turn the recording off for this one. Just a
Okay.
second. Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording because I mean, it's fine. Nothing like confidential here, but